The Old Lady and the Birds. The sun is a rare commodity in London. It is constantly obstructed by the seemingly endless sea of clouds that dominate the sky for weeks at a time. The heavens are rarely, if ever, spotless. The threat of rain looms constantly over the city, though it strangely materializes as often as you feel it would. People used to the weather walk around in garments as varied as there are stars in the sky, folded in different levels of readiness in case the ever-present promise of water from the skies falls or not. You can see some people walk around in shorts, expensive suits, bizarre combinations of what you could describe as clothes, and even, I swear, I have seen some wearing floaters, just in case their next rain unleashes a flood of biblical proportions. That morning the weather was so perfect, so immaculate, pristine. I did as any other person living in London with the day off would, and went to the nearest open green area to enjoy the sun. I arrived to a small park behind a pub around the corner. The pub used to be a church, so that made the park a de facto graveyard. Most gravestones had been put aside so pedestrians could enjoy the place and walk around the luscious green spot surrounded by old stone. I always liked that park. It was small and intimate. Few people went there regularly, so it was a nice place to take advantage of the weather. I went down with a towel, a book, music, and enjoyed the sun. Only a few people were in the park at the same time as me. Most notably was an old lady who sat on a bench to enjoy the sun. She was a woman dressed in a way one expects a traditional Russian grandmother, with a colorful heavy dress and the handkerchief around her head. She looked like someone had taken a photo from a postcard of the Soviet Union. She sat on a bench and picked up a bag to feed breadcrumbs to a couple of pigeons that gathered as the only lucky customers. I put my towel down, and without much care I enjoyed the sun. The hours went by. When the clock struck 1, I decided that skipping breakfast was a great excuse to take a walk and go to one of the local venues to enjoy a slow meal. When I gathered my things, I noticed that the crowd of birds at the lady's feet had increased. The pigeons had turned from 2 to a good dozen. I would have been amused by the scene if I hadn't felt something strange. The old lady seemed to feed the birds constantly, almost mechanically, going into what appeared to be a bottomless bag of bird food. There was no pause, no relaxation, just constant repetition. I decided not to entertain the idea and went for a meal, thinking that I had spent a little too much time under the sun. After I enjoyed a good cheesy slice of pizza that approximated the American experience, I decided to go for a walk rather than immediately return to my place of resting. I passed the small park as I went to my merry way, and I could see the old lady, now engaged with an easy 30 very hungry pigeons, as well as doves, turtle doves, and a couple of crows. One thing that caught my attention the most was the fact that the old lady was no longer feeding them breadcrumbs. Now it was popcorn. I imagined that the lady had really taken a liking to the birds, so I went on my merry way. After an hour, I was back at the park, feeling lighter and ready for more sun. I went back to the small park and saw the old lady, who was still feeding the birds. I should have sensed that there was something strange in the park. The place was eerily empty except for the old lady and the flock of birds that must have been at least 50 at the time. But the sun was so warm and everything was so peaceful that I decided to lie right under the sun and take a nap. I do not know how long I slept. I only know that when I woke up, the sun was going down, and I was greeted at the place by a scene that reminded me of a movie I once saw. I could not call the name of the movie from the top of my head, but I had seen the iconic scene before. Birds everywhere. Every single species of bird I had ever seen flying around London had gathered at that small park. I could count at least 100 easily. They were staring down, though I was not the spectacle they were watching. Slowly, I turned my head and saw the old lady, now wrapped in a frenzy of feeding. The food bag seemed to have no end. She just scooped and threw food at the birds like a maniac. At that point, I was sure that no normal bag could contain that much food. And then, when the lady was at the peak of her desperation, the food ran out. There was a pause. The lady trembled. The birds came down over her. It was fast. It was chaotic. I could only hear the rustle of feathers as I ducked and prayed. The old lady had been swarmed by birds, and as suddenly as they came, they left, flocking in all directions, leaving nothing behind but a bag of food. Horrified, I watched as a pigeon took the bag and left it on the bench. Then it flew away. I left the park, and since that day I have never gone back. A few days later, I saw a poster of the old lady as a missing person. Weeks later, her face was joined by more seniors, all last seen at the same park. I knew the truth, but I couldn't tell anybody. Who would believe that they were all killed by feeding the birds? I just let it be. I did not want to be killed by the birds. That was the fate of the old lady and the birds.